Hey, we're talking about worry, and worry is universal. Everybody worries, and there's been worrying forever and ever and ever. And worry goes all the way back to Jesus' time. And one time when Jesus had a little extra time to talk about whatever he wanted to talk about, Jesus talked about worry. And so the encouraging thing is, it's not just you, and it's not just Americans. People have been worrying for at least 2,000 years, because 2,000 years ago, Jesus looked out at his audience, and he went, boy, they look worried. This looks like a good sermon topic. And so there's amazing things written about worry. If you're a worrier, you should go online. You should buy a book. There's all kinds of stuff to help you worry. And worry is essentially a preoccupation with tomorrow. That's what worry is. Worry is, I'm okay right this minute, but it's those future minutes that I'm not so sure about. Worry is a preoccupation with somehow wanting to control tomorrow or find certainty in tomorrow. And you don't really generally worry about right this minute. Isn't it true? You're worrying about the next minutes. It's all about the future. And as we said last week, the truth is, you've never at any point in your life, in any category of your life, been able to control the future. There's never been any absolute certainty about the future, but it just, at different times in our life, in different arenas of life, we're reminded of how uncertain things are, and that's when we worry. And worry is about, in this moment, worrying about the next moment and somehow trying to capture, the attention of God, or somehow being able to harness some power to where there's certainty about tomorrow. One article I read as much as I could about the subject coming into the series, and one thing I read, one author, wasn't a Christian author, just a secular author, said that worrying is like prayer in reverse. Worrying is like prayer in reverse, and I love that because it's true. Prayer generally makes issues smaller. Worrying generally makes issues bigger, because when we worry, what have we done? We've sort of cleared out all the other arenas and all the other issues of life, and we have focused our attention on one thing. Am I going to get into that school? Am I going to pass the bar? Am I going to pass an exam? Is she going to call me back? Are they going to keep me in the company? Is our industry going to survive the recession? We get hyper-focused on the one thing, and it gets bigger, and we're just totally distracted by something we can't really, in most cases, do anything about. So Jesus, knowing all this 2,000 years ago, it's as if he wrote this for us in our modern day, addresses the issue of worry. And the thing that he does, which is so helpful, unlike anything else I've read, Jesus actually gives us a solution. And all the other things basically help you medicate your worry, or help you, deal with your worry, or cope with your worry. Honestly, Jesus comes along and says, actually, there's a solution for this. And this sets him apart from everything else. So I think you should read everything you can about worry and find books and it help you with your stress and anxiety and, go see a doctor. All that's, fine. But Jesus, what he says is absolutely incredible. So I didn't want to rush through it last week, so we split it in half. And so if you have your Bibles and want to follow along, we're in Matthew chapter 6. And I kind of gave you half a sermon last week and some things to think about. And today, we get to the conclusion of what Jesus says about worry. But if you weren't here, I want to make 3 quick statements to kind of catch you up with what we talked about last week. Jesus made 3 amazing points in the passages the verses we looked at last week. The first one was this. He said, first of all, this is where we're going to start today. He said, first of all, you can't add anything to your life by worrying. No matter how good of a worrier you are, you might be like a professional worrier. People may come over and say, help me. I'm not as good as you. Help me. You might be like your husband or wife may say, you worry about everything. You worry about things that aren't even related to you. You may be like the greatest, worrier in the world. But Jesus said, but you've never added anything to your life by worrying. You've never been able to harness the future or reach into the future and manipulate the future by your worrying. You're not able to add even 1 minute or 1 second or 1 hour to your life by worrying. You're not able to impact the things that are most important to you. So basically, it's a waste of time, which means it's a waste of life, because your time equals your life. When you run out of time, you run out of life. So when you say it's a waste of time, it's a waste of life. So Jesus says, first of all, even if you don't believe there's a solution, we can all agree on this. It's a waste of time and life. The other thing he says is this from last week. He said, by saying don't worry, I'm not saying don't care. Now, one of the pushbacks that you're going to have today, or maybe you had last week, is when I read the verses where Jesus says don't worry, you interpret that as Jesus saying, well, don't care. In other words, I have a big test. Jesus says don't worry, so I'm not going to study, because Jesus said don't worry, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to care about it. Your marriage is in crisis. Your wife says we need to go see a counselor. Yeah, but Andy said, Jesus says, don't worry. So I'm not going to worry about our marriage. It'll just all work out. That's not what Jesus is teaching. In fact, you read the life of Jesus, you never find a shred of irresponsibility. You never find a shred of Jesus saying, well, it'll just work out. Who cares? So saying don't worry is not the same as saying who cares. In fact, last week we saw Jesus taught the opposite. He said, God expects us to do all we can do, but once we've done all we can do, we don't need to worry about the next series of moments. Jesus taught that we're to do all we can do in the now. Have you filled out the application? Have you studied? Did you show up for the interview? Did you pay all the bills that you could pay? Have you done everything you can do? He says, you do all. Is there a sign in the yard? You do all that you can do, and once you've done all you can do, you don't have to worry about the next series of moments or days or hours, because your heavenly Father cares for you. So he's not advocating irresponsibility. So don't worry doesn't mean you get a latte, a surfboard, and just chill and hang out. That's not what don't worry means. It means that you don't have to have a pile of anxiety over something you have no control over, which is the future. Because as Jesus said last week, we have the opportunity to be in communication with and relationship with the only one who knows and can manipulate and control the future. And then the last thing, and this is where he's going to take us today, and this is such a big thought. Jesus taught that the things that you're most devoted to are the things you worry about the most. That if you want to know what you're really most devoted to, track your worries, because your worries lead you to the point of your greatest devotion. That your devotion impacts your emotion. That's what we worry about. And so one of the best questions that we can ask as we think about the things that we worry about is this: if the things I worry about reflect my devotions, what am I most devoted to? And that's where Jesus kind of picks up the thought and takes us to a solution. Because if what we're devoted to determines what we're worried about, then if we could redirect our devotion, we would conquer, in many cases, our incessant need or feeling like we need to worry about the future. So we're going to pick up in verse 27. I'm going to read 3 verses that we covered last week just to kind of get us going, and then we're going to jump into the second part of this passage. If you weren't here last week, I highly encourage you to listen to last week's message online. You can go online and watch it for free, listen to it for free. You can get a CD. There's all kinds of ways to find it. But make sure you get both sides of this. And then next week, as we close the series, we're going to look at a story from the Old Testament that's a fascinating story of someone who, in a very dramatic way, bumped into some of these same truths. All right, so we're going to start in verse 27. We covered these last week. I'll just read through, and then we'll pick it up where we go. Matthew 6:27. Can any of you, and here's the big question, can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? No. And he could have said, how many of you have worried so much you've taken hours off of your life? And we would all raise our hand. And why do you worry about your clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labor or spin like we do. We labor and we spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. And remember last week, Jesus says, I want you to pause and take a little lesson from nature. Remember he said, look at the birds of the air. And we said, we don't have time for that. Look at the flowers of the field. We do not have time to look at the flowers of the field. I got to pay my mortgage and, work on my 401k if I can find it. We have all that stuff to do. And Jesus says, no, wait. I'm trying to help you. So just back up a little bit, and I want you to consider what I have been doing, and what you have taught your children that I've done and grew up believing that I did. I created everything. Don't you believe that? Yeah. I created economy, I guess, I created the flowers of the field and the birds of the air, and they have instinct. They fly south and they come back, and, flowers break through the soil, and there's the circle of life, and, Lion King, and there's all this stuff that I put into motion, and you believe that, don't you? Yeah, in the beginning, God, I believe all that. I believe there's a creator. I taught my children that. We looked at the flannel graph and did vacation Bible school and Noah's Ark, Yeah, I believe that God's behind all of that. He's going, okay. Don't lose sight of those things that you believed as a child and that you believed your whole life, because this is part of helping you overcome your worry. So he says, verse 30, talking about the flowers of the field. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you? Again, taking us back. Do you think God's God? Yeah. You think God's in control? Yeah. You think God started this whole thing? Yeah. You think God's behind it and keeps the planets? Yeah. I believe there's a power. I believe all that. He's going, okay. If you're that far along in your faith, why would you stop short of the next step? And then this is where he kind of twists the knife a little bit. And this is where we ended last week. O you of little, what's the word? Faith. In other words, this is huge. Even if you just stop here and don't listen to anything else. There is a relationship between the size of your faith and the size of your worry. He says the reason your worries are so big is because your faith is so little. In fact, this is really fascinating. I didn't tell you this last week. There's two little Greek words that are combined together, kind of a compound word. Or compound word, is that what you call it? Compound word, yeah, thanks. English teachers. Compound word, that this is really fascinating. This word doesn't show up anywhere in any other Greek literature, older or newer than Jesus. This word doesn't show up anywhere else in the New Testament. Jesus made this word up. He's the only one that took these two words that don't go together and fit them together. Where it says, oh, you have little faith. Literally, I think he was making fun of them and kind of had a smile on his face. Here's what it would mean literally in this environment. He said, oh, you little faithers, you. It's a word he made up. You're a little faither. Little faither, little faither, little faither. He says, come on. I think he's poking fun at him. He's going, okay, get me straight. Let me get this straight. You believe God created everything? I believe. You believe the birds figured the whole thing out because God put it in them? Okay, I believe. You believe the flowers come up and they die and they replenish and they seed and the bees and the whole, yeah, I believe all that. You think God did all that? Yeah. So you don't think God can clothe you? Oh, you little faither, you're a little faither. I think he's just making fun of him. He's going, look, you've already believed the harder to believe part. Why don't you just let your faith go the next step and say, you know what? I don't know how it's going to work out. I can't control the future. I've spun and I've sowed and I've reaped and I've saved and I've done all I know to do and I've paid my bills and I've worked hard and I've studied hard and I filled out the applications and I showed up at the interview. I've done everything I know to do. I can trust God with the next series of nows. I can trust God with tomorrow. He's going, come on. The reason you're so worried is your faith is so small. You little faither. Because there's a relationship between your faith and your worry. People with huge faith, they don't worry much. In fact, they bother you. They have the same set of circumstances you do, and they're not worried. And you're like, come on, you need to join the worry club. The rest of us are worried. You need to worry. What's wrong with you? And some of you have had the privilege of interfacing with or having friends with or living close to people or going to church with people who really, they don't worry. In fact, their circumstances are worse. Their future is darker. Their future is far more unsure. And you talk to them, and they've done all they can do, but they don't seem to worry. They don't even seem to be afraid. And you think, what I think when you meet those people, you think, well, I don't know how I'd handle that. Boy, I'm glad that's not me. Boy, if that happened to me, I'd be a nervous wreck. If it happened to me, I would drink more, I'd medicate more, my family would probably blow up. I don't know how I would get out of bed in the morning if I was going through all that. And they just seem to be not fine, but they're just not worried. What is that? You've just met somebody with big faith. Because the bigger your faith, the smaller your worry. So Jesus says, okay, come on. We need to talk about faith here. You see, you don't stop worrying by trying to stop worrying. That's like trying to go to sleep by trying to go to sleep, right? Remember when you were a kid and your parents would say, no, just try to go to sleep. You know, how do you try to go to sleep? I don't know how you do that. Same thing. You don't, with your husband or wife or your kids say, Mom, you worry too much. Stop worrying. Okay, how do you do that? Jesus says, okay, I'm going to tell you how, but we got to see this connection. Part of the problem is, and if you don't understand the problem, you'll never embrace the solution. It's a faith problem. Your faith is small. You've not allowed your faith to go the next step. You've not even followed your faith to its logical conclusions. God did all of this. Do I think God can handle this? He moves on. O you of little faith. So, verse 31, so do not worry, saying, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? Now, as we said last week, the what shall we eat, what shall we drink, what shall we wear, those were the worry points of the people in his culture. They are not the worry points for most of us. That's not what most of us are worried about. We're worried about some things that could lead to the place where we would say, what shall we eat, what shall we drink, and where shall we live, and what shall we wear? But for people in his culture, it was day to day, it was hand to mouth. If Jesus were speaking today, he may say something like this. He'd say, so don't worry, saying, where am I going to find a job in this economy? How am I going to sell my house in this economy? How am I going to pay for my kids' college? How am I going to apply for the scholarship? How am I going to get into that school? How am I going to get into that fraternity? How am I? He says, whoa. He says, don't worry, saying, woe is me. How's it going to happen? How can I ensure a future for myself? How can I control the outcome of these decisions? How can I somehow harness, God's power to make something happen? He says, look, don't spend your time stressed out all over those things. Now listen carefully. Not because they're not important. They're very important. Not because you should be careless and not care. Not his point at all. He says, don't worry about those things. After you've done all you can do, don't sit around worrying about the future. And then he really kind of twists the knife. Again, he's just playing with us, kind of playing with his audience. Listen to what he says next, verse 32. Still hasn't given us a solution, verse 32. For the pagans. Now, this is Jesus' word, not mine, okay? So, the pagans, that's people who don't even believe there is a God. Don't believe there's a personal God. Don't believe that God knows your name. Don't believe there's a God that answers prayer. For the pagans run after all of these things. Now, this is a real important little phrase. When he says for the pagans run after, that's parallel with worry. That's parallel with seek. That's parallel to devote themselves to. He's going to look. He's going to look. Come on. You guys believe there's a God? Yeah, we believe there's a God. You believe God did all this stuff? Yeah, we believe. And, we would say, and we believe God sent Jesus. We're there. He's going to look. If you're so stressed out over these important things, these critical things, these things that are important to life, if you are so stressed out and bent out of shape over all these things that you can't get to anything else and you're so distracted, you're acting like people who don't even believe there is a God. You're living your life practically as an atheist. You're saying, yeah, I believe, but that's irrelevant. I've got to worry. I've got to stress out. I've got to over-medicate. I've got to take the edge off. He says, if you do that, you're acting like a person who doesn't even believe there is a God. Now, here's where I think that little phrase is so important to us right now, where we are as a culture and in our nation. Now, listen. You see, all of us to some extent are arm in arm with people who have the same worry and the same needs and the same concerns about their industry, about real estate, about jobs, about school, about future, about marriage. I mean, you name it. There's a group you could huddle up. In fact, we could divide up this room and say, everybody whose number one concern is, what am I going to do with my house? You go right over there. Everybody whose number one concern is that prodigal son or daughter that you can't seem to act right. You go right over there. We could all huddle up and be, arm in arm. We all have the same worries and concerns. And Jesus is saying this, look. As you bump into, share your story with, and rub shoulders with people in the marketplace who have the same worries that you do, your response should be so different that they are amazed. In other words, they should be able to look at your life and say, wow, but you don't seem worried. I mean, you seem to care. I mean, you seem to be a responsible person, but aren't you worried? Aren't you afraid? How do you sleep at night? Aren't you freaked out? What are you going to do? Why don't you seem to be, out of control as my other friends who have the same issues? Jesus says this is your opportunity to shine brighter than ever before. You know what I think as a church, as a culture, as Christians, this is our opportunity. Because we're at a place as a nation, we're at a place as a people where there is more to worry about than there ever has been before, or at least that's the perception. Which means for those of us who face those same circumstances but refuse to be bound by worry, our light and your light's going to shine a little brighter. And Jesus is saying, look, if you give in to worry and you get sucked into worry and you get distracted by your worry, there might as well not even be a God for you. You're acting like everybody else. Here is your opportunity to shine brighter than ever before. Now, you know what you're thinking. You're going, okay, is there another opportunity to shine brighter than before? I'd like to have another opportunity, okay? If we could just let this one move on and give me another one, like how to manage wealth. He won the lottery, and all those other people, when they won the lottery, it ruined their life, but it didn't ruin his life. I'd like to shine like that. Could I sign up for the win the lottery, shine bright, But we don't get a choice, do we? We don't get a choice. And Jesus says, look, your struggles and your temptations and, your circumstances are common to all men. The difference is not the challenge. The difference is not the trial. The difference could potentially be your response. Don't worry, run after, fret, and get bent out of shape over, where am I going to live and what am I going to eat, what am I going to wear? He says, that's what people who don't think there's a heavenly Father worry about. You should be different. Still, he hasn't given us an answer. But listen to how he finishes out that thought. And your heavenly, into verse 32, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. Now, this is what separates the pagans from the unpagans, this right here. He says, come on, don't you believe, or do you believe that your heavenly Father knows that you need these things? Do you believe that? Do you really believe that your heavenly Father knows that you need these things? Wouldn't it make a huge difference if you were just to live your life as if you really believed and knew that your heavenly Father knew? Imagine it this way. Imagine if tonight, you got all this stress and it's a kid thing, a marriage thing, a money thing, whatever it is, business thing, industry thing. What if tonight, just before you went to sleep in some way that didn't totally freak you out, an angel appeared and all the angels said, and you knew this angel was from God. I know this is kind of weird. And the angel said, God knows. He knows. That's all he said. That's all the angel said. He knows. Would that be like extraordinarily comforting? If you just knew for certain that God knows, even if nothing changes, even if you don't know what God's going to do, even if you have no idea about tomorrow. Isn't there extraordinary comfort in the fact that he knows? Because if he knows and he's kind of worried about it, if he knows and he's on it, then I don't have to really be as worried. And Jesus says, okay, by the way, in case you haven't been paying attention, he knows that you need these things, which means they are important. This isn't about it doesn't matter. It does matter. But the good news is your heavenly Father knows, and because he knows, you don't have to worry. But you're only not going to worry if you believe that he knows and you trust that he knows. And that's why the bigger your faith, the smaller your worry. But if you could come to the conclusion, you know what? I really believe that God knows what I need, and God knows about my loneliness, and God knows about the stress, and God knows about the marriage, and God knows about the house, and God knows about my industry, and God knows about the clothing, the closing and the clothing. That God, if I really was confident that God knew all of that, what would happen to my stress level? What would happen to my worry level? And Jesus says, I know what would happen. It would decrease significantly. And so he says, your Father knows that you know. He knows that you need them. And now, drum roll, he comes to the solution. I mean, he's made fun of us. He says, you're not as smart as a bird. You don't have as much faith as a flower. You're as bad as the pagans. You don't have any faith. You're a bunch of little faithers. I mean, he's basically made us all feel like total weasels. And he said, now, there is something you can do about worry other than trying not to worry. I'm going to tell you what it is. And it goes back to this idea that he introduced at the beginning of the passage when he said you can't serve God in stuff. The issue is your devotion. He says the solution to worry is redirecting your devotion. The solution to worry is not try to stop worrying, and the solution to worry isn't, well, it doesn't matter anyway, who needs a house and who needs to eat, and maybe, that's not the solution. The solution is to redirect your devotion. Listen to how he opens the statement that gives us the solution. You've heard this 1,000 times. You may have sung it in songs all your life. Here's how he begins. Verse 33, but seek, what's the next word? Let's pause right there. But, big contrast to all that we've said so far. But seek first. In other words, what you have been seeking first is the wrong thing. What you have been extraordinarily devoted to is leading you to the valley of worry. What you have been seeking first is why you are where you are emotionally. You've been devoted to the wrong thing, and where you are is the result of being devoted to or seeking first the wrong thing. He says, so I want to give you the solution. The solution is a transfer of devotion. The solution is to channel your devotion to something entirely different than where it's been before, because your devotion determines where your emotions are, and your emotions determine what you worry about. And here it is. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. But seek first, as opposed to school and grades and job and house and prodigal son and daughter and kids and singleness and loneliness. He said, all those things are very important. In fact, your Father knows all about them. But as long as they are your primary devotion, as long as your primary devotion is financial security, as long as your primary devotion is happy marriage, as long as your primary devotion is kids that act responsibly and get a job and get out of the house, and as long as your primary devotion is all of those things, getting in the right school and fraternity and the GPA, and as long as those are your primary devotion, then you're just going to worry. But I want to invite you into a whole different way of living and thinking. This is Jesus' invitation. This is Jesus' invitation for every one of us to surrender our entire lives to him. Not a segment, not just the area you're worried about. He says, here's what I want you to do. I want there to be a reversal in your devotion. I want you to seek first my kingdom and my righteousness, which means I want you to seek my agenda for the world and to put your agenda second. Now, many of you, especially if you're raised in a Catholic church or a Catholic system or went to Catholic school, you know all about this because you quoted this 1,000 times. If you're raised like me in a Baptist church, you only heard this mostly at weddings, and it was sung, and it was this lady went like really high and it shaked the chandelier. But in both cases, you've either said it so many times you've forgotten what it means, or you heard it sung so many times you didn't pay any attention. But here's what it means to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. It's not complicated. It's not theological. Jesus summed it up this way when he prayed the prayer we've all memorized. Ready? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. That means in your life, in your dirt, in your world, in your earth, in your marriage, your business, your finances, your school, your parenting, your kid raising, all that stuff. Thy kingdom come, this is what he told us to pray. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. To accept Jesus' challenge of seek first the kingdom of God, it simply means this. It means you pray like this: God, you know how bad we need to sell our house? Apparently all of our neighbors are in a similar situation because there's signs everywhere. Now we've added things, first, and it was discounted, then it's got a pool, then it's got a basement, then it has a yard. We planted an oak tree. Now the signs are trailing along the ground of all the things why, and then we started putting them on the top, and it's been discounted and discounted again, and you can get an interview with the president, and just come, please come by, somebody come see our house, And so you're stuck, and I'm making light. It's very, very serious for you. And you say, God, we got to sell our house. And God, I don't know how it's going to happen. But God, thy will be done. Because I've made a decision. Your kingdom comes before mine. To trust you. God, you know how bad I want to get into that school. And I've done everything I know to do. And my temptation is just to obsess over, is it going to happen? What if? But I've decided, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth, on my dirt, in my life, as it is in heaven. I've decided to seek your kingdom first and where I go to school second. I've decided to seek your kingdom first and my business and my industry second. I've decided to seek your kingdom first and address my singleness second. I've decided to address, in other words, I've made a transfer of devotion. Instead of being committed to my kingdom and trying to get you to answer my prayers, I'm going to take Jesus up on this challenge. I'm, to the best of my ability, going to surrender all of my life and say, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. No matter what happens, at the end of every prayer, at the end of every day, when I'm so tempted to delve into tomorrow and worry about tomorrow, I'm going to say, wait, you know what I need. I believe that. You know what I want. I've told you that. But at the end of the day, I sincerely, to the best of my ability, I want your will to be done in my life more than I want my way. And when you make that transfer of devotion, something happens to your worry. I've seen it 1,000 times. Sometimes people are forced there through brokenness. Everything is so taken away, and life is so shattered, and life is so unpredictable. They feel like they have no option at all except to say, God, I surrender everything to you. And God's going, well, you didn't leave me with much. You waited a little long, but hey, okay, I'll take it. I just surrender all my life to you. And they will tell you, and you've been there at different times in your life, and suddenly there is a peace, and the Bible says it this way, that surpasses human comprehension, which means it's a peace that doesn't make any sense because nothing's changed except something in your heart. And Jesus says, look, I know you're freaked out, and I know you're worried. You're wondering where the next meal's coming from. You wonder what you're going to wear, what your kids are going to wear, and where you're going to eat and sleep. But I'm telling you, you don't stop worrying by trying to stop worrying. You stop worrying by exchanging devotions, by becoming devoted to something entirely different than you and your kingdom. And so he says to his audience and to us, so I'm inviting you. Would you begin? Would you make the decision to open up your hands and say, I'm surrendering everything, my good marriage, my bad marriage, my finances, my 401k, I'm surrendering everything to you. At the end of every prayer, after you know what I think I need, Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. I'm trusting you for tomorrow as if I had any option anyway. I'm trusting you for tomorrow, and I'm praying that you would be glorified and that your kingdom would be glorified and you would shine brighter and people would know you better because of what happens in my circumstances. That's what I want more than I want anything else. You say, well, Andy, that scares me to death. Well, there's another option. Just worry. Just worry. Well, God, Andy, if I open up my hands and offer God everything, what if he takes it? What do you think's happening right this minute? That's why you're so worried, because you can't control it anyway. Okay, I'm telling you, I don't care how good your job is, you have no idea what tomorrow holds. None. Oh yeah, I got a day timer and a day planner and 4 assistants and a calendar and you may not even make it to work. You have no certainty about tomorrow. So why would we worry about it? You go, I don't know. I know it doesn't make any sense, but Jesus says, I'm just inviting you. I'm inviting you to say, in every area of my life, thy will be done on earth, here, as it is in heaven. And then, here's the surprise ending. Into verse 33. And all these things, what things? All the things you've been worried about. All the things you're concerned about. All the things you don't have any control over. All the things you don't know how they're going to work out. And all these things will be given to you as well. They will? Really? Yeah, because you're more important to God than a bird. And you're more important to God than a flower. And you've been invited to address him and call him your heavenly Father. So of course, he's going to take care of you. Then he closes verse 34. Therefore, summary statement, wrapping it up. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. In other words, when your mind begins to wrap its emotion and its tentacles and its concern about tomorrow, he says, no, that's just when you stop. And you say, no, thy will be done tomorrow. Thy will be done tomorrow. Thy will be done tomorrow. I've done all I can do in the now. I've done all I can do in the today. Thy will be done tomorrow. I fully trust you with my tomorrow as I have sought to seek your kingdom first today. When I was preparing, I read all the stuff I could on worry, and I read an article by a secular psychologist, and it was an interesting article on meditation and how to relax your mind and your brain and your feet and your toes and your eyes and all. And it's all good. Meditation's good. It's great. But the funny thing was at the end of this really sort of not medical, but a kind of high-end kind of article about meditation and relaxation, he tells a story. And the story so parallels stories I've heard all my life in ministry, but it was like this unique little kind of story to this guy. And the story was about a friend of his whose 7-year-old daughter was killed in an automobile accident. The guy totally freaked out. He started drinking. He drank his way out of a job, drank his way out of a marriage, just drank his way into a hole, just could not deal with the stress and the unpredictability of life, and eventually checked himself into a rehab place that was built around the AA model. And so the guy was in there for several weeks. When he came out, his friend who wrote this article was talking to him, and he said, I was surprised by the sense of peace that he had, not only just in terms of alcohol, but just life. He had no job. He had left a trail of destruction behind him financially and every other way. And he asked him, he says in this article, I said, how are you coping with the uncertainty? Because everything in this guy's life was uncertain. Here's what he said. He said, I'm hanging on to something I learned in AA. The guy said, what's that? He said, one day at a time. One day at a time. And the guy wrote this article, PhD, whatever, and I think that's really good advice. I'm going, yeah, it's like 2,000 years old. Your friend didn't discover this, and AA knows they didn't discover this. Jesus 2,000 years ago said, I got an idea. Why don't you worry about today and let me worry about tomorrow? In other words, why don't you decide to just take this one day at a time? Not because of a sense of fate and whatever happens, happens. No, we're not trusting in fate. We're trusting in God who's invited us to call him Father. And Jesus says, I'm giving you permission. I'm giving you permission not to obsess over tomorrow, because I will be in your tomorrow. You just be responsible today. And then at the end of this day, you say, but thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth, in my world, in my circumstances, as it is in heaven. And I'm not going to worry, not because I don't care, not because I'm not responsible, but because I can't control the future, and I'm trusting you to be there. And as my trust gets bigger, my faith and my worries get smaller. So here's what I would suggest that you do between now and next week when we wrap up this series. And this is a version of something that many people have done for many years, and I've seen this done in lots of different ways. I thought about wrapping up the service and having us do this together, but I think this is a bigger deal than a quick commitment. Okay, Andy, I'll pray, Lord, I'm not going to worry anymore, and you can be in control. I mean, we're sincere when we make those decisions, but as soon as we walk out these doors, nothing has changed, right? Nothing has changed. Here's what I would suggest you do. Would you be willing this week at some point to get alone when you've got a few minutes, and this may be 5 minutes, this may be 30 minutes, and would you be willing to make a list of all the arenas and areas of your life, not just the ones you worry about, but everything? Start with the ones you worry about: job, industry, next week's closing, kids' school, tuition. Am I going to have to pull my kids out of private school? What about keeping my son in college? Here's basically everything here's every arena of my life, my marriage, my husband's job, whatever it might be. You just make a list, because this is life to you. This is that part where Jesus would say, is life not more than, and then you'd fill in the blank, is life not more than a job? Well, yeah. Is life not more than clothing? Yeah. Is life not more than where your kids go to school? Well, yeah, I guess life's bigger than that. Just make a list of all those things. Here's every arena of life. Here are the areas where I tend to worry. Here's my whole life. If you were to say, tell me about your life, here's every category right there. It may be a word, it may be a sentence, it's whatever you want to do. And then I want you to read this passage. And then I just want you to pray and say, God, I know what happens when I hold this like this. I worry, because I want somehow for there to be the certainty and the future the way I imagine it. But God, I know where that's gotten me. I know where that's pulling me. I know what that's done to my relationships, my thinking, my health. And so I just want to say, I'm changing devotions. I'm redirecting my primary devotion away from all this. This still matters. This is still important. I still care. But I want to learn what it means to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. So, I'm letting you have this. You're going to be more important to me than all of this. I'm releasing this. I'm saying, thy will be done. You know what I want. You know my hopes and dreams and my goals, and I got a plan, and I got an agenda, and I got subpoint A and 3 because I'm organized, or I just have a general idea. Thy will be done. I'm devoting my life to you above my devotion to all these things. That's just called surrender. And this passage is simply an invitation to what we say in lots of different ways on lots of different weeks. Would you be willing to surrender your life, what represents your life, to your Father in heaven? And when you do, that will be a step of faith. And I'm telling you, that's where the action is. It's one thing to believe that. It's another thing to trust in. Believe that is, I believe that the Bible is written by God, or I believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I believe that we should go to church. I believe that, I believe that, I believe that. That's fine and good. The action is, the transition happens, the change takes place when you move from I believe that to I trust in. And when you say, God, I'm shifting my devotion from me and my kingdom to you and yours. And I'm surrendering and I'm trusting you with what defines life for me. That's a trust in, not a believe that. And something will begin to happen inside of your heart. Jesus says, you conquer worry not by trying to conquer worry. You conquer worry by surrendering your life to God's agenda for your life. You don't conquer worry by trying to conquer worry. You conquer worry by surrendering your life to God's agenda for your life. you end every day and every prayer with, but thy kingdom come and thy will be done on this earth in my life as it is in heaven. And then you cannot worry about tomorrow because tomorrow will take care of itself. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, that's so much easier for me to say than for any of us to do. And Lord, I know that outside the walls of this building, there are bills, there are unanswered prayers, there are pressures, there are expectations, there are people that are demanding things of us, there's insecurity, there's marriage things, it's just all out there waiting for us. And Father, you know, and I pray that we would leave here at least with the assurance God in heaven knows and can be trusted. Father, however this lands in each of our lives, would you give us the wisdom to know what to do with what we've heard? And would you give us the courage to do it? And for some of us, I pray this would be a breakthrough week as we maybe for the first time in our lives open our hands and say, I'm surrendering my life. I'm surrendering everything that represents life to me. I'm surrendering it to my Heavenly Father. Thy will be done in my life as it is in heaven. Father, please bring us to that point. And Lord, I pray for the person that's listening that has just excruciatingly difficult circumstances. Would you please, in your grace and your mercy, would you respond in some tangible way? That it would go beyond you simply knowing, that they would see you do something in their life as an indicator that, yes, you know and you do care for them. And I pray all of these things, Father, in Jesus' precious name. Amen. Hey, thanks for being here. We'll see you next week for part 3 of Why Worry.